Hey guys, this is Markuis for CardRunners.com, and today I'm going to be making the second part of my second series against Sliikz at 100 NL on PokerStars. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on what happened in the first part of the series, but it was fairly aggressive. There were a lot of swings. I think I'm up a bit at this point in the match, but Sliikz ends up destroying me for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I think, and then I make a comeback towards the end. So there should be quite a few stacks flying around, and I recommend you watch the first part if you haven't done so. On the top right, I bet the flop, and I'm definitely going to bet this turn. I think that he peels this turn with a lot of stuff worse than 9-6. I mean, he does have some ace-x's in his range for check calling and some better nines, but a lot of his stuff is worse. I don't hate a check back on the turn and then a bet on the river, but I think it looks a bit stronger to do that than to bet the turn. And also, Sliikz assumes that I check back ace-x's on the flop, so it makes my turn value betting range a little bit narrower in his eyes. On the bottom right, I'm going to be barreling all the way to the river. I don't think it looks super bluffy if I bet this turn and river, and I think he's going to have a lot of 8-9s, 6-7 type hands that are going to fold by the river. And on the bottom left, I'm just going to raise him, and I'll be happy enough sticking the money in on the turn if he wants to. So as I said in the first video, against Sliikz and against good players in general, I'm going to look to bluff in spots that aren't conventional spots to bluff, such as the 5-7 maybe. An offsuit 3 on the turn is not a conventionally good card to barrel on, but because of that, I think it makes my turn bet look stronger against a good player, and therefore I think it is a good turn card to barrel. And that's just a question of leveling. If you're assuming your opponent's on that level, then you're going to have to adjust. But it's tough to decide if they actually are on the level of bluffing in spots that don't look bluffy, or if they simply bluff in spots that don't look bluffy because they don't have a clue or what's going on. And on the bottom left, yeah, I'm just betting, not much to say. Top left, it's a close spot, but he hasn't been betting too many turns when I check back to flop. My standard would be to call here, but since he's been pretty conservative in these spots, I think I'm going to fold. And another thing is, in general, against Sliikz, he doesn't really slow down if he's bet the turn or flop. Flop is a bit different, but definitely on the turn, he's unlikely to bet here and then check the river with air. So if I'm calling the turn, I should be ready to call the river, and I don't really want to do that. Bottom right, I'm going to check back. I don't think there's too much value to be had from betting, and I can get into a lot of tricky spots against a person like Sliikz who would be willing to check raise ace-x and represent jack-x, or turn some counterfeited pairs or straight draws into a bluff, and I would not like the situation too much, so I think I'm just going to check back. I don't think it's a bad spot to bluff against a straightforward opponent because it doesn't look very bluffy, and he's just going to check fold like queen 9, 8-9, even some ace-x's, some king-x's that he might have floated with a lot of the time. But against Sliikz, I think he's liable to check raise those hands a fair bit, actually. So I decided to raise on the top left. I think that's better than calling, and I think it's okay. I think that he bet calls occasionally some draws, and that it does look reasonably credible. Like, I definitely raise like king-queen, king-jack, ace-king if I check back on the turn there. And then I decide to show down my ace-high, which, I don't know, it's debatable. Okay, so bottom right, I make a really nitty check back on the river, and that definitely isn't my standard with kings there, but against Sliikz, I don't think it looks super bluffy if I bet there, so I don't think he'd call me with ace-x, and really getting called by ace-x is the only hand that I'm expecting to value bet against, whereas he can definitely have a lot of tricky stuff that puts me in a ton of difficult spots. He knows that it's very unlikely I have 10x or jack-x when I check back the turn, and therefore he can put a lot of pressure on me if I bet. So I think going the conservative route there and not trying to eke some value out of ace-x is probably best, even though it looks really nitty. Bottom left, I'm going to try and avoid making my hand seem too transparent by check calling on flops like this, but I decided to do it. And I end up doing a lot of like robotic things when I'm four tabling, which isn't a good thing, but it happens. And now I'm going to check fold. So it's a pretty bad line overall. Like, I doubt he's betting the flop to shut down all that often on a board like this. I don't mind check calling on the turn either, but if I check call this turn, I have to check call all the way down. I think against Sliikz, I don't think he's shutting down on the river too much. But check calling all the way down wouldn't be the end of the world at all. One thing to note is that I don't think he's going crazy when I check to him on a board like that. Like, I don't think he's automatically just going to try and barrel me, because it does look like I've got showdown value when I'm checking it on that board. And he hasn't been as willing to barrel me in general as he was in previous videos.